am going to work on the 29 Faces February 2017 Art Challenge that is hosted by Ayala Art. There is a link to her channel, the Facebook group, and her blog in the description box below. Now yesterday I did day one. Very, very happy with how these turned out. This was a photo from Pixabay. There is also a link to Pixabay.com in the description box below. Now, since I'm putting these in my 2017 Composite Art Journal, I am going to work on the back of it so that you can just flip the page from day 1 to day 2 on to day 29. This is the photo that I'm going to work on today. I went from doing an older woman to a young child, and I really do like this photograph. This is from Pixabay. And if you look at it, just look at his eyes. Just look at him. I don't know if you can see my little cursor here or not, so maybe I'll just use a pencil to point to what I'm seeing here. One thing that I like to do on the photos, this is the photo, but before I start to draw it, especially if I'm using a reference photo, one thing that I like to do is look at that photo and look at the faces and verbalize what I'm seeing in the hopes that when I start sketching it, that verbalization will help me remember what I looked at before, if that makes any sense. But look at his eyes. Of course, he's got big baby blue eyes. He's got for a baby, he's got fairly definitive eyebrows. And you can see, let's see if I can get this any larger. Right in this area, you can see the definition, just a little shadow area of the roundness of his forehead. You can see it more in here. So I'll be concentrating on his eyes, also his ears. If you look at this photograph, you'll see that the bottom of the ears fall below the nose line. Now I see it more than you probably do, but there is some shadow definition under his eyes. It doesn't look like he has big puffy eyes, like he's been crying or anything, but you can see the definition here of the facial fleshiness of his face. A lot of shadow down in here for his cheeks. Get it down a little bit more here. A lot of definition in here. You don't see very much of his mouth because his little hand covers up his mouth. I almost wish that this photo did not have his hand over his mouth, but I'm going to stay true to the photograph as it is. That's what babies do. They put their hands in their mouth. It's got a pretty little pink collar here and a little blue shirt. For this face, I'm going to use several things. I'm going to use my ink tints. I'm going to use these Staedtler crayons, watercolor crayons. I'm not sure how much of them I'm going to use, but I am going to use them. I'll probably primarily be using the ink tints. My watercolor brush. These big fat Stabilo pencils. These are Stabilo. They're water soluble. I really like them for making big thick lines, and I'm going to be using my R2 ink pen to put in the base sketch. So that's where I'm going with this. I'm going to get started, and when I'm finished, I'll come back and talk about it. this is where I'm at on this. I'm pretty happy with it. I've got the definition of his head here, his eyes. His eyes are really pretty large, and they do have those big round, almost staring at you eyeballs. A lot of pictures, when you really study them, do not have those big round eyeballs. Usually the eyelid comes over it. But since this is a baby face, the eyes are very large, and his are just a bright blue. I've got his little hand covering the hint of his mouth. His nose here again, I'll have to do a little bit more work on his nose, but I do think I have it in the right place. Maybe it needs to go over to this direction just a little bit more, but I can work on that as I go. Now I do know that I want his face to be a soft skin tone, so I'm not going to be putting too much color on this. So I'm going to get started first by putting in the background maybe a little color. My page is very wet, and I am at a point where I need to stop again and let this page dry. I do like how it's coming together. I do like it. I need a little bit more work in here. His skin tones are very light. I might put in some more, maybe a little tannish color in here. A little more definition of his hair. I might come in with my ink pen again, because for me, these are illustrative sketches. I don't really mean this to be a painting, even though I do put color down on the page. I really do sketch a lot. To me, it's more of an illustrative sketch than an actual watercolor painting or meant to be a portrait painting or anything like that. It's a face. I want to work more on the eyes, more on the ears. I've just put some color on the ears to push him back from the main part of his face, to push him back so they look like they're on the side of his head. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll come back and work on it some more. My day 2 of the 29 Faces February 2017 challenge is all finished. I did this young boy, this baby boy. I am really happy with it. Got his little ear here. His hair is thin. I wish I had a little bit more highlight in his hair, but I'm happy with it the way it is. I have blue, light blue, and dark in the background. He's got his little hand over his mouth, maybe like he's sucking his thumb. I don't think he was sucking his thumb, but he's, you know how babies sometimes put their hand in their mouth. His eyelashes are really long. This was done primarily with ink tints. Not that ink tints has any, usually when it dries it's permanent, but I'm using a Stabilo pencil around the edges here, this big fat Stabilo lead, but I really do like it for doing the edges, and that is water soluble. If it gets wet, it can mess up the rest of the area here. So I will be spraying these with a fixative. I'm really happy with it. This is going to be a really fun addition to my 2017 Composite Art Journal. I can't wait to start on day 3. I will see you on the next page.